For Tuesday, February 6th, 2024 at 12:30 p.m. Are there any late items to add to the agenda? Seeing none, adoption of the agenda, there's a recommendation that the February 6th, 2024 Committee of the Whole agenda be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, second by Councillor Bratton. All those in favor? That's passed. Thank you.
Can it live along on the screen? Would that work? The agenda, since we don't have paper copies?
You do have,
Through Councillor Sim, through the chair, we will have a presentation coming up shortly that will be primarily on the screens.
Okay.
did you not have, it's in there,
It's in the,
yeah.
it's not there on my desk.
Oh,
I don't have it. Is that mine?
All three, yes.
Okay.
okay.
Got it in there? Okay. Okay, do we have any declarations of known conflict of interest or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no delegations or presentations. Adoption of the minutes for Committee of the Whole meetings. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held January 30th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Bratton. Seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Thank you, and that was passed. No adoption of the committee minutes, no unfinished business. Moving on to new business staff reports. Staff, I will pass that over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Councillors. Today we will be presenting the financial plan, the first draft from 2024 to 2028. There we go. Good. I was just checking to make sure I could drive. So in front of you, we have an agenda. We'll be looking at a quick introduction of the process, the financial plan overview, some of the projects we're looking to have an early release on some of the projects so that we can continue on with our procurement. We'll look at some of the operating projects that we have. We have some new ones there as well. Look at the impact, a preliminary impact of the property assessments, and last is public engagement and next steps. In this presentation, we are looking for council to also approve to move forward for engagement with the information that I have so far. And if council happens to think of a new direction for staff, please let us know. As we are building the financial plan, there are several objectives that we like to consider in our financial plan policy. They are to deliver a plan that supports the council strategic plan, deliver a plan that is balanced. And this is not just financially balanced, because of course we can make the plan balanced, but also balanced for the community, for the organization, in that it is also clear and easy to understand. Does the plan fund all our services? So, for example, does a plan fund all the sewer and water services? And I can say that yes, financially this year, our plan is fully funded in water and sewer. It also should fund the maintenance of assets, and it should fund priority projects that council may have. Is this plan sustainable and predictable? Sustainable, we're working on it. We're working on trying to build the foundation to better predict the future and our needs with the assets that we currently have. You'll see plans like master plans update, you'll see feasibility studies, and you'll see financial guidelines in your special operating plan. Sometimes it does take time to get to that stability and predictability, but I'm confident that we can move towards that direction. The financial policy also has guidelines. The guidelines are aligning with strategic goals that council may have, guidelines aligning with public policy. For example, our reserve policies, and guiding documents like your master documents. The financial plan should be innovative. We should encourage each other to be innovative in finding solutions that effectively utilize our resources. We should be fair and equitable to the community, to staff, and to council. Collaboration, I feel that we have collaborated more this year than we have in prior years. We've worked as a team to come up with a project list for council to review. We're including council as per the council schedule that we laid out early. And of course, we're including our new CAO, and he's directing some of the process. And finally, flexibility. This is the flexibility for the district to have and respond to events that may occur. And we do this by providing some balances in our reserves and ensuring that we have enough reserves to be flexible. As we move through the planning process, you can see several different boxes here. Right now, we're in the first pink box that says consolidate financial plan. In the month of February, I'll be going for public engagement, and we have 3 events planned. And then we'll bring back the consolidated financial plan and the results for council to make the final decisions for the financial plan bylaw and the rates. So what the legislation says is that we need to adopt the financial plan prior to the tax plan, and everything needs to be adopted by May 15th.
What would be your ambition for next year to have this financial plan adopted by council? Like, although that's the legislative requirement, what would be your ambition for next year?
I can't answer that at this moment. I think we'll take some time and review that. The only hesitation I have is that we're still implementing Questica, and I plan to use Questica next year. We may never come out of the financial planning process. We may still be continuing it all the way along and trying to implement Questica, getting our staff used to the software, and implementing the financial plan in that regard. I mean, ideally, it's up to council or the CAO what the timetable might look like, but we have to have the resources to match the targets.
So supplemental to that, the question would be is because I think one of your objectives from what I'm hearing is that we really adopt a plan so that we are further ahead, so that we can have this pre-purchasing done. So we're not asking it without necessarily the full scope of the budget. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think, yes, you're hearing that, but I think this is just a cog in the whole process. When you're looking at the financial plan process, it starts with a strategic plan.
Oh, yes.
So,
Oh, is that important? Just kidding. Council?
so as long as we follow the process, I think we'll get better, but I really hesitate to putting a date.
Okay.
Ideally, you want it done before Christmas, right?
Yes. Okay,
But
and that's
Christmas is
the
like
important
December
thing.
5th. That's
Yeah.
really ambitious.
Yeah, but it's something that's aspirational, and I think it's
Yeah.
it's something for us to recognize because we've been in this cycle of where we are now for a long time. And I think as we emerge and become more mature as a council, we've got to get tighter with it, and we've got to get more focused on that plan.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thank
agree.
you.
Mr. Thackeray?
So just in support of my colleague, first of all, and partially to respond to your question, I think it definitely behooves council to look seriously at some policy changes in some just minor refinements in terms of some of the approval dates that we need deadlines for, because the district has a habit of not syncing capital budgets with best procurement dates and timing for capital. And I think this is a known quantity. We want to change this. And the financial plan is intended to be a 5-year financial plan. And I think by moving in this direction, and I really support what Linda's doing, where she's going, I think that will help get you there. And even if it means a policy that, you know, your capital budget is adopted before the fiscal year end, and then you can move forward with the capital purchases and so forth, and it should be a fairly smoother process. So I think we're going to get to it, and I really like where this team is going, and we're going to get there. It'll probably take us another year because, as Linda said, rolling out Questica is a huge project, but it's a really good tool. But it takes everybody swimming in the same direction at the same time to make it really go, and it will. So thank you.
And just a quick overview of the property tax process. We have our initial BC assessment report. We will be waiting for the revised rule that comes out in May prior to adopting the property tax bylaw. We'll be preparing after the property tax bylaw is prepared, we'll prepare the tax notices. It'll go out between around April, May, probably most likely May. And we'll receive payments till, I think, July 3rd is the due date this year. And then finally, our last task in the property tax cycle is our tax sale on the last Monday of September. I do have a video here showing the property tax assessments as they relate to property taxes. I've showed it several times to council. If they're interested, I could do that, or we could move ahead.
Anyone like to see that? Yes, please, if you could, Ms. Clausen.
Because I don't think it's long,
Nope,
and I
it's,
think it's informative because it helps refresh.
okay, I'll see if I can do this here.
If not, I take it back.
There we go. I don't know. Okay, here we go. I don't know what's gonna happen with it.
BC municipality. They are
What else do I have to do?
Each January, they receive a property assessment notice from BC Assessment, along with all other property owners in BC. Later in the spring, they also receive a property tax notice from their local municipality. Property taxes are determined by your local municipality and based on the assessment value provided by BC Assessment. Let's assume an imaginary town has 3 properties. All 3 properties have the same assessment value of $100,000. $900, then the tax rate must be set at $900 divided by 100,000 plus 100,000 plus 100,000, which equals $0.003.
Just a quick overview. So when we prepare the financial plan, we're looking at the strategic plan, the financial plan policy, the council direction, and master plans, and any other framework plans that we might have with the District of Clearwater. There are a few important financial considerations are that we provide adequate budget for council initiatives, work plans that we have ready in process, and projects. We consider the consumer price index at this year, or last year it was 3.9%. The year before it was 6.9%. And we also consider the allocation to reserves for future expenditures. Some highlights are that we have about $6 million in capital projects this year. They're mostly funded by grants and reserves. We have, our operating costs include $1.6 million in special projects. Many of those projects are building master plans and feasibility studies and development refresh, things like that that are building the foundation to move forward with the community. Our property tax, preliminary property tax assessment sees a slight increase in non-market change in the utility class, or a large increase in the utility class. So just to define non-market change, it is a definition, it is a term used by BC Assessment. What that basically means is an increase in units. So in communities that are growing would mean that it could be more houses. People are moving to the community. In our case, we see this non-market change, a large one, coming from the utility class, which typically is the assessment of infrastructure that the TMX has left on our properties. And they are getting charged for that. We're not seeing an increase in residential. And then we also are replenishing reserves and reserves by about $800,000. In our projects, we have several categories here. We have a large project in roads worth $3.5 million, mostly funded through grants. We have some recreation projects, utility projects, and administration and protective projects. These include things, we'll go through them a little bit later, but they're worth about $6 million. But you can see the majority of them are grant funded, $4.3 million. And reserve funded is $1.6 million, and taxation, I'm happy to say it's only about $35,000. So what we have here is a quick look at our operating budget, which includes the special projects. We mentioned special projects of $1.6 million. So in this slide, I'm going to use it later on, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time just going through the slide. The ribbons on the left, yes, the ribbons on the left is what's coming in. So what's coming into the District of Clearwater financially is taxes. So that includes also not just property taxes, but it also includes parcel taxes as well. Sales of services, the 1.5, that's your utility services, water and sewer. It can include recreation services, it includes the septic receiving services, things like that. So that's $1.5 million. $1.4 million in grants, and those grants will include government transfers, TNRD transfers, grants that we have specifically received for projects. We have to transfer in some reserves and surplus amounts, that $1 million. This will include, a large portion of this one is for a special project for the dredging of cell number 2. And then other is interest and penalties that we collect. So that's what's coming in to fund the $7.8 million in operations budget. And what's going out is, you see in each one of those departments is general government services, 1.8, protective services, $600,000, transportation, 1.4. Community development, this is economic development and planning. Recreation, this is NTSP as well as parks and our recreation programs, water and sewer, and $800,000 in savings. Having a quick look at our 2024 preliminary tax assessments by class. Class 1 is residential, Class 2 is utilities, Class 6 is business other. So those are the three main classes. You can see that actually our assessments have fallen. In 2023, it was $606 million. In 2024, it's $566 for a fall, $566 million, and reduced by about $40 million. The residential class 1, has fallen by 10%. And the utilities has increased by 3.4, and the business other has increased 9. So something to think about here is that we are seeing a shift in the roles, and whereby you're seeing the residential values shrink, you're seeing the utility value grow, and you're seeing also the business values increase. Having a quick look at what this financial plan brings in terms of the changes in our reserves. It adds $814,000 to the reserves. It drops the reserves, or between the reserves and the surplus, by $2.6 million. So you might be asking, where are we now with our reserves? So I'm not completed all my reconciliation for reserves from 2023. However, we carry about $9.5 million to $10 million in reserves. Some of that is related to the Wells Gray Community Forest, so you take 4 off of that. And about 400 of that is the utility reserves. So yes.
So with that Wells Gray Community Forest and the 4 million that you just said, is that the amount after what we had voted for last week, or is that including it?
I have not worked that into the plan.
So it's 4 million
I
total.
yeah, it's 3.7, but I just remove it from our reserves from the District of Clearwater reserves. I know it still belongs to the District of Clearwater, but for us to be able to access it at this time, I've just put it aside. We will still administer it, but it's not a reserve at this time that I'm using to access budget for projects and things like that.
Okay, so just so I understand it, what you've just said is that currently we're carrying reserves of $10 million.
Yeah,
And 4 million of that had been earmarked for Wells Gray Community Forest. Because
removed
you've
that.
set that aside, what the District of Clearwater is working with as a working reserves is $6 million. Is that what I'm getting?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. We also have surplus, which is about $3.8 million. That is our emergency fund. We do use it from time to time for operating, but as council wishes, our policy says that we should have 4 months of operating reserves. That's about $1.8 million, but best practice says we should have 8 months in there. So council may want to decide, not today, but when we review the reserve policies, where we want to land with emergency reserves. And we have also about 300,000 in DCCs that we are not using at this time. The District of Clearwater does have debt, has a small amount of debt of $222,000. You will see in the financial plan that we're presenting today that we're recommending that we go to debt for some projects in 2025, if council wishes to. Our debt servicing level or liability servicing limit is 25% of revenue. Right now, we're about 1.15%. So we do have room there if council chooses to move in that direction. So this is our financial planning process. We talked about the sources of information that we use to build a financial plan, especially in the project side. We're looking at the infrastructure master plan, the master plan, safety considerations, and certain legislations. We developed business cases. I think council should have a copy of all the business cases to date that we've developed. And then we fund each of the projects, and our funding formula basically goes with, first, if we have the grant available, we'll fund it with the grant as a first funding source. If we have the resources for reserves and we've put aside, we'll fund with reserves. And then finally, if we need to, we can fund through debt or taxation. As we've gone through this process, we're also implementing the capital module in Crestica. So we're doing a parallel type implementation. And we're also going to go to public engagement next in the month of February and council approval, hopefully in April or May. Going through the capital projects, on the left-hand side, capital projects, we have 8 carry-forward capital projects, 23 new capital projects for a total projects of 17. That's not right. Our total capital projects is $6 million. They're funded 72% by grant and 23% by reserves. And taxation funded is only $35,000, and in total of 5 years is $12.8 million. On the special project side is we have carry forward of 11 with 9 new, and again, my total projects just don't add up properly. Total 2024 is $1.6 million. Most of it's funded, 45% funded by grants, 43% by surplus, and reserves is 23%. We have no special projects that are funded by taxation, which is good. And our 5-year project plan is $2.5 million. On your desk, you will have 2 project plans. The one with the primarily blue ribbon on the top is your 2024 with funding. And the page that's blue and green is your 2024 to 2029 project estimates are going forward. Yeah. So, yeah, one looks like this. This is the 5-year plan. And one looks like this, which has more of a blue ribbon, is a 2024. So as you see, our 5-year project plan isn't completed and consistent from 26 to 28. Often this is the case because we're focusing on what's right in front of us and not always focusing on what's in the future, or we don't have a funding source for the future. So you have $6 million in 2024. 2025, we have $4.7 million, and you see a new color there, which is a green color, which is debt. I'm recommending that we fund a portion of that with debt, $2.8 million with debt. It's for the siphon, the hospital lift station, and the Strawberry Flats PRV projects. And then in 2026, it's only $800,000. or $300,000, and 26.7 is 800, and 28 is also about $900,000. So as we move through the strategic planning process, move through the financial guidelines process, and we embrace long-term financial planning, we will see probably a fuller picture here. So we have, I'm just going to go through some of the highlights of the capital projects. And the big block, so we have a big block of capital projects that are to do with the public works, about $4 million. The water services is 230,000, protective services is 230,000. Dutch Lake is about 589, and Parks is about 553. In the bridge side, I was going to ask if our Director of Operations would like to share what the $3.5 million is with the bridge. Sorry.
All right, so the 3.5 million was for the riprap that was insufficient underneath the Clearwater River Bridge there. So the proper type of rock that we need, we don't seem to have any that we can source locally. So the cost estimate that was put in is for hauling rock from Kamloops. So the cost, if we can find some local rock, we might be able to cut the size of the project down. But the design would be happening this year, and the construction wouldn't be happening until 2025. So it's to replace all the riprap on the banks upstream and downstream. Well, I don't know the exact distance, but the design is still underway. But any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, do you have an idea, Mr. Carmichael, just roughly how many cubic meters is needed for the bridge work there with the rock? If you're trying to source local, I was just
Right.
curious on kind of a rough estimate.
I don't have those numbers, no. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, Council Bratton.
Have to get long. Is it because it needs to be clean riprap and of a certain size? Is that why we can't source it locally?
Well, I think locally there's a lot of volcanic rock,
Yeah.
which is like porous. So it's we need a large size and density. So
And density.
yeah, so because the porous rock can be pushed away by the river itself. So, and that's what we have on there right now is smaller volcanic rock on our dam or dike.
I'm sure that we've probably asked all the contractors around here. Like, it seems funny.
Well,
We're built on rock.
very very preliminary
Oh,
design
gotcha.
was done.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll definitely be digging deeper to see if there is some available. But
Unintended. Okay, thank you.
We have, oh, sorry.
No, yeah, no, the only reason I asked was we do have a quarry where we get rock from at work.
Okay.
And it has been proven insufficient for what we need it for. So there is lots that's been blasted, drilled, sitting there. That's the only reason I was curious if that was possibly an option that
Okay.
definitely saves some money with that there. Anyway,
Yeah, I can definitely find out some volumes for you though.
okay,
We can-
I'll keep contact with you about that.
Great.
Mr. Prime?
Thank you, Acting Mayor McKenzie. Just to add some context, when we required some riprap for Freshets two years ago, last year, we actually had to get it from Kamloops as well. We did contact all the local contractors. Nobody had a source of riprap at the time. I know one contractor has applied for a quarry along River Road specifically for riprap. However, it's again the same incorrect type of rock to utilize for a lot of major infrastructure projects, so it wouldn't actually be beneficial for us. There has been some preliminary work done in sort of looking at some outside sources for that, and I think it is worth exploring in the future that we're going to continue to do.
Okay, thank you.
We also have 2 generators in our financial plan. One is for the EOC Center, and one is for wells 1 and 3. It is a carry forward project. We have the Candle Creek construction project scheduled for this year. We did portion of it last year. We rubbleized it, and this year we're paving it. Right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Now, this represents IT, and we have some exciting projects here, and I'm going to ask our Director of Corporate Services to tell us about the EOC project in particularly.
Yes, thank you. This is in regards to an EOC network sort of internet backbone upgrade project. We have continued to have sort of difficulty in some of the remote sites, the Fire Hall, NTSB, and Old Centennial Hall with Ascon Internet, essentially, and sort of identifying some of the solutions. We also took into consideration sort of redundant capabilities, and we were sort of considering how to integrate sort of Starlink as a backup to the some of the remote sites or fiber. So the project essentially will piggyback off of the TRU fiber that we lease here at DLCC, and through what amounts to really high-powered Wi-Fi, we'll sort of beam a signal up to the water intake. From there, it'll get distributed to our other 3 sites, so they'll have sort of full access to the fiber here. It assists in a couple of things. Basically, it'll all appear as one network, so they won't have to utilize sort of SonicWall VPNs anymore to sort of access the local network infrastructure. This will save us money on sort of those licenses, which are about $1,000 a year for each of the sites. It'll save on the ISP costs for each of the sites, so the savings is actually about $10,000 a year. And it'll sort of have failover redundancy built in, so if the fiber goes down, it'll automatically fail over to Starlink on this side. So, you know, for the cost of the project, which is primarily only possible because of staff that are here presently, if you did have to outsource this project, it would be, you know, in excess of $200,000, but I do bring a certain expertise to it. Any questions?
Councillor Sim?
So what you've just said is that because you are able to bring in there a level of expertise to it, what does that mean?
Just in designing the network infrastructure and the sort of the radio implementation of it, to get people to, you know, who have the skills to point some of these high-powered Wi-Fi correctly to sort of augment that and run some of the cabling. You know, if you outsource that to a firm to do that sort of out of house, it would be quite expensive.
So what I'm trying to work out is to take that on and utilize your expertise. Who manages the role of corporate officer while you do that?
I'd still be doing that. This isn't going to take an extraordinary amount of my time. I do have support from Northern Computers in completing this project. I'm not doing the majority of this myself. I am working with them to ensure it integrates into our network correctly.
So just to clarify, what I've heard is that because we've got the in-house expertise, it's a savings of approximately $200,000. So I'm just trying to translate that into where is the savings? Is that $200,000 worth of labor? And that's why I'm just being cautious about how thin you can be spread.
Mr. Thackeray?
So I guess just to maybe provide a little more context, this is a critical piece of EOC infrastructure that the district needs to be resilient, because if we lose power, we cannot function. We're not able to operate. So it's, for that point, it's a critical piece of infrastructure. My colleague here has a great aptitude for this type of work, and he's quite correct. The labor costs, if we actually put this out as a project would be expensive. And so what we're doing is we're essentially putting up some towers, and we're using Starlink as our baseline. And that helps us with the redundancy because we have fiber in the building here. So by utilizing the fiber that we have in the building and putting up the towers, so we have towers off of the fire hall, which has a backup generator, we can be operational in a few months here. And it's not a super complicated project. I saw what Mike and Sid have done, and it's just outstanding, and I think they get it. And I've been through this before, lived experience, and we're doing the right thing, and it's a very economical cost. And like Sid said, we're going to save money by repositioning our systems here. So it makes a lot of sense. If it was a bigger project, there's no question in my mind that we couldn't do it in house. But we're a small. We can deal with this, and because Sid knows what he's doing. It's a great asset. So I commend Sid and Mike, just what they're doing, and it's really outstanding. And we've all leaned in on this project, and the whole management team has helped out as well. And I think it'll be okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So supplemental to that, and I appreciate that feedback and that background, it's just doing the double check because of a project worth $250,000 that somebody can do because they're experienced. I mean, that's a big number to digest. I don't know if I'm the only one here, but and just, sometimes just double checking where your checks and balances and making sure that organizational health is then supported. But
Yeah,
it sounds
absolutely.
like everybody feels
And
confident in it.
I'm
and
extremely mindful of that. But we have to remember too, because it's sometimes when we bid projects like this, we get really high quotes because we're isolated or we're perceived to be isolated. So we just pay more. It's like paying $10 for a little packet of pepper at the grocery store. It's not really $10, but it's what it is. And so we pay $5 more than it really is. Not that everything is like that there, but we just do sometimes. Thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate where Councillor Sims going with this, and I know in the past staff capacity has been a big topic. I do see, if it's going to be an issue with that, but I appreciate Sid's expertise and your explanation on that. I just want to make sure, being staff capacity was a hot ticket quote over the past, that it's not going to be an issue. That's all.
It is, but speaking just a part of my team, if we don't do this, we are in serious trouble.
Okay.
It's not one of those things that we simply cannot leave this exposure. And if we couldn't do it in-house, we would have farmed it out.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I would have, I wouldn't, Mike and Sid were on it, and that's awesome.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just to be clear, is that there's no misunderstanding of the importance of the project, just the balancing of the resourcing over all areas of it. That was it. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Frizzle.
I guess maybe what I want to get out of this too is that there's support for you if something happens that you're taken away, that there's somebody that can help you in your corporate services job.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Frizzle, through the chair. It's definitely building redundancy in corporate services is still high on my mind, and that is, through working with the executive assistant through service level changes such as the admin assistant to backfill some of that capacity. That's what I'm building towards as well this year.
And the best thing about this project, it is grant funded.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Glasson. It is grant funded through UBCM, so it doesn't have any taxation impact.
Thank you.
Moving forward, in the Dutch Lake Community Center, we have air conditioners and air handlers that are on their way, and this was approved last year, and we're carrying this one forward. We also have an interesting, I think we spoke about it earlier, about the TMX $330,000 project improvement project. I'm going to call on our manager of parks just to run through that quickly, what it all includes. Sorry.
So our plan for the TMX funding is to complete the 37 East project. That would include installation or construction of a gazebo to house the Loggers Memorial. The gazebo would be the same design as the one recently installed at the Splash Park. Some contouring of the banks, some planting of trees, some benches, beautification of the area, curbs to designate parking areas, and then we would complete the pathway from the beach. And rather than staying on the road, we'd wrap it up around the banks within that park, so it would lead you right to the gazebo and then along the backside of on Lakeview Drive. Installation of a septic system at the Dutch Lake Beach, which will save us $12,000 to $14,000 annually on pumping costs there. Installation of a new outfield fence at Kapuscinski Ballpark, which is a safety, and installation of flagpoles at the DLCC. That was it, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so, all 5. Yeah.
Oh, Councilor Bratton, sorry.
Installation of the septic at Dutch Lake, did we said yes to that? I thought we had some concerns because it was gonna lose parking.
I don't think you have said yes to it yet.
Oh, these are just ideas.
That's the plan. And
Gotcha.
And that septic would, the field cannot be driven on, so we'd place it up at the top bench in the existing parking lot. It would be pumped up to there. And so we would lose a small amount of parking, but because we've added parking on the road and better access to 37 East, we'll have more parking than we do now.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Sim?
I just want to review what you were saying about how the trail would loop around. Can you just expand on that? I'm not.
So right now, if you look at 37 East, we would take the trail, rather than staying along the road front where traffic will be in and out of that parking lot on 37 East, we would wrap it up, turn north and run it up the existing bank. If you're adjacent to the white residence there, and then around that's where the gazebo would go in that corner. And then we'd wrap it around the other bank parallel to Lakeview Drive and bring it out on Lakeview Drive to the crosswalk. So it would eliminate traffic on that road and take some traffic away from that busy intersection. Some foot traffic.
Not even close.
We're just following the contour of the bank, correct, all the way around?
Yes,
Is all
yes.
Essentially what's going to happen.
Rather than continuing to run
Thank you.
along the roadway, we'd wrap it up at the bottom right corner. We would go straight north along the bank and then up around parallel to Lakeview Drive.
So supplemental, at one point in time, we had talked about paving that part that goes against that bank that comes from Dutch Lake Beach to 37 East.
Can I
Yeah.
come up and show you on the map?
100%.
Yep.
I don't like it when Siri says turn north on West 41st either, so.
Let me show you anything. So the pathway now is traveling along here. We construct the gazebo in this corner of the pathway, then we come up here, along here, and then go over onto Lakeview Drive. And so we would get rid of this pathway here because we're asking people to drive through here.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
so it's made it much safer there, and also for when people park there, then they're not walking out here onto the pathway, they're walking into a safer pathway.
Okay, and then let's move the photo, so let's see how it ties into Dutch Lake. Yeah. Oh, Dutch Lake Beach. Okay, so if I'm understanding it, our tricky spot is right here.
It's still our tricky spot.
Right, okay.
Yes, that hasn't changed.
Do we have a concern of, who's using the thingy? Can you show us back to the intersection before DLC's? Are we worried about this here? Because that becomes quite a congested.
That's a terrible intersection.
It's a horrible intersection.
It's actually been suggested to us by the people that did this original design for this,
Yeah.
that we should close this road and Lakeview Drive should turn off.
Right, that makes sense.
And we've had some discussion about that, it's a whole other project.
Okay.
Planning, traffic patterns and all that.
Yeah, because there's mailboxes and what.
Yeah,
Canada Post gets
this
involved.
is a terrible one.
Yeah. Where's the snow?
Counselor Sim?
So it looks like that looks like an excellent plan, safety and everything. Would this allow us to be eligible for an active transportation grant, given our tricky part that we don't seem to have an answer for? Because we are tying projects. Is that something that's been considered, or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't even think it's been considered yet.
Oh,
We're tied up with the existing projects, but maybe Chad has?
Chad, do you want to speak? It's part of this project to pay that extension.
It is, yeah, and I, yeah, and I don't think it's that narrow that it will be an issue, just from when we went out and walked it, but it was too narrow to do angle parking, but we did parallel parking and the trail, and there should be room.
What was tricky about it?
It,
When you two are commenting about the tricky part, what did you mean by tricky?
Well, just that intersection.
Not the intersection, the walkway there.
Oh, just the steepness of this bank here and this narrow spot right here.
Right.
Right, just trying to get proper width. From here over is great, and from here over is great, just this where, at that bank, and the material in there, here is very rich. Sand and rock and stuff, and I'm hoping that we can cut this back a little, do a little bit of block work along there, to kind of create a little bit of a bank there.
So I need some clarity, because I've got great news on this side that it's being paved, but uncertainty on this side. So help me tie this together. What am I missing? Like, is it being paved or no?
we still have not done a design for lock blocks that Roger said. We haven't confirmed that we need a design for lock blocks. But it is a possibility,
So we're still roughing it at this point?
yeah.
So, does that mean, are we talking about putting the bank back or not?
That's part of it.
Yes.
What's determining, is there an engineer or something that's doing this?
I'm not sure.
There will be if it gets approved, yeah. Yeah.
How do we approve it if we don't know?
I mean, approve in principle that you want this work done, I suppose. Yeah.
So this project, I know our CAO said, why don't we just put a whole bunch of these projects together and get it all done for $330,000? So we've put all these little small projects together, called it park improvements, and we're trying to get it all done within our grant funding. And that grant funding has become, like, we're running out of time. So let's use this grant funding first. If something should occur that, you know, you need some more grant funding to complete that tricky section, maybe perhaps that might be sitting on its own. But for now, this is what we've got in our financial plan. We intend to do all those little pieces. So they were the gazebo, the flags, the septic, the trail, and the fence. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. But using the TMX grant is where we're trying to accomplish.
Counselor Bratton?
The only concern I have is that we're not piecemealing it together and we're not looking ahead like we keep forgetting to do. And that, so say we run into another tricky section where we need to prioritize it as opposed to a fence or something, you know, I don't know. I'm worried about that becoming a concern if we rush something and we should have done that. I don't know. That's, I don't know. Am I out to lunch?
The lens of a 5-year plan is to have the 5-year vision. And so on that particular area, because it's been quite a big community focus, is there an estimate of how much it would cost to pave that small section, roughly?
Yes, there was a business plan done for that section separately. It was in the I don't remember the exact number, what it was, 120,000-ish.
120.
Going from memory.
And we have 300.
It was-
Yeah, that's okay, so that would be separate.
Yep.
The 120 is not separate. It's part of the $330,000.
So how much is it gonna, when can we pave that area?
Is that important for council?
Yes, right now it is. So I just need to know, because I'm looking at the budget, and I'm looking at how do we complete a really important area. So another area that I'm looking at is the $50,000 that we've got for, you know, the expansion. That hasn't gone anywhere for the Sportsplex due to lots of different constraints. So is that $50,000, is that better utilized in this area and then leveraged in another way for some grant opportunities? It would be really nice to finish Dutch Lake to 37 East. It would be beautiful, right?
love to
And
see
so in a 5-year plan, I'm looking to see how that is pieced together. And that's it. Otherwise, I don't want to go through another year of, it's great, but look, this isn't done. It would be so nice to cut a ribbon.
So perhaps what we can do is prioritize those little pieces, and if something falls off, let's say the fence falls off because we have to pave, we can do that.
Yeah, that's all I'm looking for, is I'm looking
Yeah.
to see how we put it together. I'm seeing a lot of nods that everybody would love to celebrate this project.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and it all can be done. But we could just prioritize it.
Walk you through,
Yeah.
because the intention is to connect the whole area and finish it, because to your point, it's been, well, here's a septic field, and here's a path, and here's a bench, and here's a gazebo. Well, okay, those are good things, but I think that makes a park.
Tie
And
it
do
together.
not forget the monthly opportunity where council is featured on the info board. And then my name is Shelley Sim, not, you know, other, you know.
But in all seriousness, the intent is because we're like everything together, we're using the 330 day. You know, if something comes up, we'll bring it back, if we need to. You know, you never know, if you dig something up, you might find something. Or just the design around it, because we'll find a way. I think, we'll let Roger and Chad.
Mr. Mayor?
I think what we need first of all is for council to say, yes, that's what you want to do there. Because originally we had 37 East as its own project at $550,000, right? And so we're trying to save a whole bunch of money and combine these projects. The paving from the beach to 37 East was initially a project that Chad was handling, and he and I really haven't had a chance to get together and see how these projects are all going to come together. My goal would be to do the pathway in 37 East first, the septic next, then Kapuscinski Ballpark, and then the flagpoles as money, if there's enough money in the budget for it. Because although we have preliminary numbers right now, costs just seem to be constantly going up, right? So I hate to say we're going to do all 5 of these. I'd rather say we're going to do them in this order and hope the funding carries through for everything.
And I think that that's wise. And I think that what I'm seeing around the table is that we want to see things that are finished before we move on.
I've been working on 37 East since 2016.
Listen,
I
I've been
would
sitting
be-
here right
no
with you.
one would be happier than me to have that.
Yeah, no, I
project
agree. And that's why this is why we're having these discussions.
Yeah.
Choosing, you know, the vision of council, choosing what is our priority. And I think that one of the things that we've talked about is, you know, finishing off ways that we connect our community safely. And Councillor Herring spoke to that quite a bit last year. About why that's important. And when things just drop off, we don't look consistent. And I think, you know, we need to. That's my priority, and I hope people will join along.
Join you.
Can I?
Councillor Frizzle?
So when we're saying we want to do this, when will we be doing this? When would it start? If we approved
Is-
it and it,
I would like to see it start as soon as weather permits.
those are words that I like to hear.
It would be ideal to have it all done by July 1st.
love it.
And then before we get into our busy summer season, when doing any construction there would be very difficult.
Councillor Harry?
So, there's like a whole list of committee recommendations here. Like, are you looking for approval of these now? This is coming, so today we need to get through this list of the A's and B's.
So, Councillor Herring, you bring up a good point, is if we can finish the slide, and then we can perhaps go to recess and go to regular council, and then continue with the conversation after regular council, if you so wish.
Yeah, if needed, we can.
I've just added the park improvements to that list. Roger, or the manager of Parks and Facilities, has done such a good job. He also has an accessibility project. It's about $93,000. Would you like to communicate about that?
Yes, we received an accessibility grant, and when it has been applied for, they were specific to handicap accessible picnic tables in some of our parks. Access onto the playground, all our playgrounds are raised above ground. Access for wheelchairs onto the playgrounds, and handicap accessible doors at all our facilities. And that's all I know about that grant so far. I really haven't had time to look at it.
So certainly accessibility, and I know from having done the mobility project with the UNBC study done many years ago, one of the big challenges that a number of people who needed mobility aids said is that anytime that you're on gravel, it is like risking your neck. It's a terrible, terrible thing. So in that accessibility grant, was there an appendix that said paving would be important to actually access amenities like Dutch Lake Beach?
No.
Huh.
I don't think so. And I say that because I really haven't had the chance to get into the grant yet. To be honest, I didn't even know we'd applied for it till we received it. That's another concern for sure, because all our playgrounds are also pea gravel, and I don't know if a wheelchair can work on pea gravel. So these are all things I have to look into. There is matting that can go down to allow access to some of the playground equipment. I just have to look into the whole thing much further. Do we need to make our jungle gyms and our swings and all that equipment, playground equipment, accessible to people? Or can they use it, I guess, is the question I'm asking, right? And I don't know the answers to that.
Good question.
Councillor Frizzle?
One thing, I was at a park in Maple Ridge, and there was a large trail. It was probably as wide as this room, to be perfectly honest, but it was packed really hard. It was dirt road, but it was packed really hard, and there was senior citizens with their walkers, there was wheelchairs, there was canes, there was everything. So there's still that feeling you're outside and not on paved ground. You were on dirt ground, but it was very safe and very accessible. So it might be something to look into for, trails necessarily. Maybe not at swings, but I just wanted to mention that.
We also have a bush truck in protective services that we're going to procure, and I think our fire chief, Mike Smith, might have something to say with that.
Thank you. Actually, it's the tender that we would be replacing this year. We did the bush truck last year. The tender was approved last year, and then we couldn't find the chassis for it, so we switched them to do the bush truck last year and the tender this year. We've since found a chassis and a contractor to do the work. the business case, the budget was 150. Since I've got the numbers back, it's about 190 for everything. So this is reusing our old tank and cabinets off the old truck. So that's saving some money there too, right? Because I've got costs before for a new tanker. It was about 400,000. So we are saving a little bit of money by reusing our old tank. So that's one thing that needs to be amended in the business case is the the more money that's needed for it. So yeah.
And finally, we have one project we want to highlight here.
Which one?
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Our trail that we're probably just finishing up, but the Clearwater River Trail. Mr. Meyer, do you have any comments on that trail?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Comments on the trail?
Clearwater
The River Trail.
My favorite trail is my favorite project of all time. We're making good progress. I hope we're gonna come in on budget. There's been some unexpected costs, but there's also been some unexpected savings. The weather has really cooperated for us to work right through the winter. Our grant does expire on March 31st. They will not give us an extension. However, as long as we're substantially complete and the grant money is spent, they are satisfied. So that's good. But if this weather continues to hold, I think we may be complete by March 31st.
So at this time, if council wishes to take a recess from the committee of the whole, is that the right thing to do? Yep. Yep. Do they need to vote or anything like that?
Yes, if we could get a resolution, that would be great.
I'll make a resolution that we take a recess and resume this post-council meeting today.
Post in camera? Post in camera. Seconder for that? Second by Councilor Frizzle. All in favor?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? You're really quiet. I gotta fix it. I have earphones in, but they're not working for some reason. See my whole office.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, February 6th at 2:03 p.m. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Sint people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Are there any late items to add to the agenda today? Seeing none, adoption of the agenda is a recommendation that the agenda for the February 6th, 2024 regular council meeting be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, second by Councillor Herring. All those in favor? That's passed. Do we have any declaration of known conflict of interest or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, Director Sau, do we have him on there today? No. We have no delegations or presentations. Adoption of minutes of council meetings. There is a recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting held January 10th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Second by Councillor Herring. All those in favor? Thank you, and that is passed. We have another recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 30th, 2024 be adopted as presented. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Herring. Second by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? And that is passed. Okay, we have no development in zoning, no unfinished business, no public statutory hearings. Mayor's report. Mayor Blackwell sends his regrets for being unable to attend today's meeting. In his chair is myself. I'll be acting mayor for February. And it's been a relatively quiet first week for me, just keeping up on emails, and that's been about it so far for me. And moving on to Councillor Bratton.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. I have nothing to report, but I would like to comment that I would like to commend staff in the office. They're doing such a wonderful job. And I'd like to just make a notice of Jenna. She's always so wonderful when we phone in. And if I get her, she's fantastic. And I've heard other reports that people really enjoy receiving her kindness on the phone. So just wanted to give that as a shout out.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Frizzle.
I don't have a lot to report today, but I too would like to recognize a staff member that he has been going through a lot to get those bridges in at the trails, the trails in the back here. We've got one bridge in and another one going. I know you've put in a lot of hours, Roger, and I really appreciate you keeping me in the loop here. And pretty soon it'll be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Herring.
Yeah, nothing really to update. Yeah, in terms of I'd like to recognize Mr. Carmichael, who I keep throwing into council meeting agendas to ask him to answer tough questions on no notice. So just wanted to recognize you for stepping up and always giving, you know, what you can and letting us know when you're going to get it back to us with more. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. Councillor Matheson, he's not on there. Councillor Sim?
Thanks very much. I think just to probably note just on the health front is that we are still moving into primary care network planning, and that's involving a lot of our resources up at the hospital and our physicians, and really just keeping a lens on that healthcare. I know in some of our committee meetings, for anybody who has been reading, that the helipad is something that's really important, and how we grow that health infrastructure is important, and also on the social infrastructure. So in the spirit of, you know, just acknowledging there is an African dance class tonight. So that, you know, that whole sort of social component, I think that we're really fortunate. And even with our partners with Yellowhead Community Services, there is a lot that still goes on and really includes everybody. And also Coaria, who continues to sort of amaze. Our paint nights, our paint afternoons are growing, as are the board games, so that this community is working hard to be incredibly inclusive in all sorts of areas. So, and if you haven't looked at the Winterfest schedule, it's pretty dynamic. So, thanks.
Thank you. And he's gone. Okay. Okay, we'll wait for Mr. Thackeray to get back here. Well, no new business. We'll move on to the bylaws. There is a recommendation that Council Procedure Bylaw number 268, Amendment Bylaw number 293, 2024 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Second by Councillor Bratton. All those in favor? No. Oh, sorry, that's right. Thank you. District of Clearwater Bylaw number 293, 2024. A bylaw to amend District of Clearwater Council Procedure Bylaw number 268, 2022. Whereas Section 137 of the Community Charter provides the power to adopt a bylaw, includes the power to amend or repeal it. And whereas the Council of the District of Clearwater wishes to amend District of Clearwater Council Procedure Bylaw number 268, 2022. Now therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembled and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as Council Procedure Bylaw number 268, Amendment Bylaw number 293, 2024. All those in favor? And that is passed. Thank you. Now going back to item 15, CAO report. Mr. Thackeray.
That council has, otherwise it's just for any no questions
Any questions for
me?
Mr. Thackeray?
Because we
on
don't,
that?
I wanted to say I appreciate you doing the work on this, trying to find out this. I know as counselors, we're often trying to figure out our role and trying to figure out how we can work best with staff. So I think this is a great place to start in terms of a thing to read. I think I'd love to have more conversations about this in the future, trying to find out the way to navigate this, you know, according to the community charter.
yeah, and that's why I put it to you just for information and consideration at this time. It is best practice. It does align with the legislation. It aligns with the practices, and not everybody's here, so it would be valuable to have everybody here. But yes, any questions that you have, please let me know.
Any other questions? Councillor Sim?
Just because I have enjoyed the series, has there been an opportunity to look into purchasing some of the books in advance? I think Councillor Bratton had looked, and there was, at the time, there was a sold out. But even to have that almost like as a book club in preface of would be good.
Actually, it is on my list. There is a series of Cuffs books out there. They're very good. I have them, but we talked about having a library just so you can reference them and they're good books to reference. So yeah, we'll let you know because Municipal World has them as part of their stuff.
And I think supplemental to that is that when we do engage in some more discussion, is just getting an idea of costs and what that might look like, and keeping in mind and how that could fit in with some of council's professional development to make sure that we're adequately resourced for that.
Through the chair, did you want the cost on the books or the?
Just of your report about what your vision would entail.
Oh, sorry, yes.
financially.
Yes, I've actually reached out to the TNR. Scott, my counterpart there, is actually out of the country. He's on holiday. But we have been in discussion about it, doing a cost recovery model, with doing a session with Mr. Cuff, but it's still in the works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Okay, we have no correspondence with response required. We do have correspondence information only. Stop me if there's anything that catches your eye. We have a letter from the District of Sicamous regarding Bill 34. We have a letter from Village of Fraser Lake regarding West Fraser Timber Mill closure. And a letter from the City of Abbotsford regarding support for UBCM resolution. Councillor Herring?
Yeah, I think that the support for the Abbotsford resolution is something I'm willing to throw behind. I think detox beds everywhere in the province are at a shortage, and I'd like to see effort be put into that. For sure. I know that in Kamloops, our detox facility, several week wait list to get into, and it has been for years. So people dealing with addictions, trying to get the help they need, it's, asking someone like, you can sober up in 2 weeks. That window, right? So, absolutely support that.
Thank you. So be able to a letter of support for that.
Well, if we do, we'd need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we send a letter of support for the Abbotsford UBCM resolution regarding detox bed.
Seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Sim? All those in favor? Thank you, Mr. Councillor Herring. Okay, moving on, we have no notices of motion. Public question comment period. Public? It was a short one. Mr. Thackeray, do you care to answer that?
So George Cuff is he is a local government trainer, consultant. He's worked for over 45 years in the business. He's one of the most reputable practitioners and trainers in the country. He's done hundreds of programs for municipalities. He writes for different publications, and he's written some excellent books on executive governance policy, which is council's role. No, he's a management consultant, and he's a extremely experienced and knowledge practitioner in the business. He's not a lawyer. He's been a mayor for many years. You could just Google George Cuff. You can see his website. If you're curious.
Any other questions?
So maybe just to further elaborate, just for the audience who's inquiring about George Cuff, is he does a lot about the role of the elected official, the role of the mayor, the role of operations versus governance. So it's basically a figure who has had a lot of experience on how to play the game of municipal governance, and just really fine tunes it and make some clarity. So, and his books are terrific. He also is a contributor to Municipal World, which is really good. But it's the how. He's one of the how to govern people. Does that help? Okay, I'll let you Google that. He's got a big website and it's, you know, all about George Cuff and that, so.
Oh, yes, thank you. And
So I think to answer that, basically the CAO Council Covenant is more something we're working on, figure out how we can best work together as council and staff, because we have a new CAO in place. So we hired a new CAO, we're just, you know, trying to navigate, trying to get best practices from other places in the province, so we're not rewriting work that's already been done. And that covenant wasn't something we've agreed to, it's something that Mr. Zachary put forward as information.
thank you for that. Mr. Prime.
Yeah, Acting Mayor McKenzie, and just, this may be a little bit late, but if everyone can use the microphones so that Councilor Bratton online can hear.
Any other questions from the public? Okay, we do have an in-camera to move into. There's a recommendation that the meeting be closed to public pursuant to sections 91 of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. And I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And J, information that is prohibited or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Move in a second. Oh, sorry.
Can I just ask a procedural question quick?
Yes.
We have to move back into committee of the whole, correct, which is a public meeting, and then we'll be moving back into further public sections of the agenda. Does it make sense to delay the move to in-camera to after that, so that members of the public can stay for the conversation with the whole?
Yes, Council Herring through Acting Mayor McKenzie. That is entirely possible to delay the in-camera portion to the second recurrence of the council meeting after we pick up from recess on that in the interest of the public.
Yeah, I'm open.
I could make a motion that we re-enter committee of the whole, that we are in recess on currently. Is that the correct procedure?
Yes, again, acting through the acting mayor, that would be correct. That we can enter into a committee of the whole meeting now and pick up where we left off from recess on that. And that.
Re-enter committee.
Second, Councilor Frizzle, all in favor? Okay. So, yeah, I know. And I'll pass that back to Miss Klassen to pick up where we left off.
Yes. So just to recap, we had just gone through the capital version of projects and highlighted a few. Now we are stepping into the special project plan, and we will also highlight a few. So you can see in front of us, we have $726,000 in sewer special projects. That is the dredging of Cell 2. It was a project that the council approved last year. We've started the project, but we haven't completed it. We have some projects in protective services of $270,000. We have an economic development project of $186,000 and a planning project of $166,000 and administrative project of $108,000. But we would like to go through a few of these. A few of these are, we have several master plans in the special projects. Those plans, let me just, consist of the DOC engineering and infrastructure studies. Last year we put about $50,000 into this budget as a placeholder in case we come across additional engineering that we are required to have to be more successful with grants. We also have a fire master plan, or a fire department master plan in the project. And we have, to complete the siphon project engineering, we had $100,000 last year in the plan. This year we're just completing that, and we have about $10,000 left in that, and we have about $15,000 left in the hospital lift station preliminary design. So those are the engineering designs that we have in the projects, in the special project side. We also have, I'm not sure if it's a newer project or we've been talking about it for quite some time, but it's a development services refresh. This development services refresh is about $120,000. It uses the local government housing initiative grant that we just received, and I think CAO Thackeray may provide you a little bit more information. This is a new project that we have seen on the list.
Any questions on the progress? We're coming forward with subdivision standards bylaw likely next month or in April for some amendments. So the project is moving forward. And there's there'll be more information coming forward in public as well.
Councillor Sim?
Is there a work plan that's been assigned to this particular project?
Yes.
And so that
And
will
that
be
will-
brought forward?
Project.
Sorry?
That project will, yes, whole thing will be shared based on the recommendations that we approved last month.
Okay, so at the next, when we get a next update, we're gonna see sort of the full
You're
scope
gonna
of the
see, you're gonna
project?
see where everything's going and where it's going based on the recommendations that we in
Okay.
January.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And we also have, I call it this development services refresh. I'm a little bit, but it's using the economic development funds. So the BC transition grant that we were using to fund the economic development officer salary for $82,000. And we also received a ETSI grant, for a grant for $75,000. So that will be used to fund that project. And I think CEO Thackeray will be happy to explain that a little further.
So we have all these grants that seem to be all over, a little bit missing. So we were consolidating all the grants that we've got and trying to get a plan together so we can see the full picture of what we're doing and what we have, how much money we have left and so forth. And we're going to kick off some work with the Chamber and some other groups with using some of this money, particularly with respect to wayfinding signage. And we're going to engage and see what they would be interested in helping with. And I've also spoken with the granting institutions. They've extended our grants, so we're good for this year. There's the deadlines where we can push those deadlines so we can actually get a reset on that program. Because a lot of what this does is actually fits in very well with what we're doing to address the legislation and address the new regulations which are coming out. And I think that will be very positive and help a lot of local groups as well. So we'll be bringing stuff back on that too.
Thank you. Councillor Sim?
So out of the funding, because I know that originally when we had put out a job posting for the economic development officer, there had been a lot of emphasis on assistance with the development file. So is this grant affording costs related to consulting fees to get our new development plans up and going?
Some of it is. There's quite a bit of money, and we're doing a reassessment of all the projects that were granted to just make sure we're aligned with what we want to do. And I've been in discussions with, and I can't remember the person's name again, I'm sorry. We're going to be engaging with them on a monthly basis as part of the grant project, and we'll be bringing back a strategy on how to roll that out, because I think there's some great opportunities to help leverage local groups here and use the expertise that we have, and try and utilize those dollars and stretch them. And we don't want to give it back, because otherwise they were saying, well, you better give it back in March. Well, we don't want to do that. They don't want it back.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So I think I'll wait for the planning just to figure out how much is grant and how much is taxation and how much, or unless you know that right now.
None of this is going to be taxation. It's all going to be grant funded. And so we want to live to the spirit of the grants and use that money to the fullest extent that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We also are completing our flood hazard mapping. I believe it's $46,000. Yes, $46,000 for 2024. It's also grant funded. A new project that we have on our list today is a radon review and assessment for about $30,000. Our buildings here have spiked in radon readings.
Yeah. We have a sustained, the challenge is we have a sustained radon reading above acceptable limits, and we have an obligation to mitigate it. So we think there might be some fairly simple methods that we might be able to do on an interim basis to try and bring those numbers down. It fluctuates, but it's for the last 3 months or 4 months, they've been well in excess of acceptable levels. We have monitors in here and all throughout, so it needs to be addressed. It's a WCB WorkSafe thing.
And on the bottom corner there, you see the lovely yellow flag iris. We have a project in our plan that's about $35,000 a year. We're looking to see if we can qualify for a grant and put a eradication program in place.
So, but that is under grant funding in the budget?
It's under grant funding. We have not applied yet. This is the only one we have not applied yet, but
Okay,
we feel that there is
opportunity.
opportunities there.
Okay, and otherwise, if not, we can defer it or, right, okay, thank you.
Well,
Councillor Herring?
Would this program be focusing on district owned lands, or would it be available to
I'm going to refer to the manager of Parks.
I'm sorry.
Yellow iris.
Yellow iris. I really haven't had any time to put towards the Yellow Iris project at this point, but I am trying to contact Catherine Tarasoff, who's the expert in this. I'd like us to have more of a long-range plan for this, what we're going to do. We could put $35,000 a year into it for 10 years and not gain anything. Could that money be better spent on a long range, a big project 1 year to try and eradicate it? So I don't have a plan yet on that. I wish I could tell you more yet. I just don't have any more information.
You're looking to apply for the grant to create the plan?
Yes.
And you also see that is our, we called it the Dunn Lake Bridge, but I'm not sure what is it the Station Road Bridge? So our Director of Operations has a new assessment on the bridge, and he would like to share that with you.
Yeah, I was contacted by Modi. They do the inspections for us, and they are responsible for the structural piece of the bridge, and we're responsible for the decking. There's some structural pieces that are failing, and in order to repair those, we'll have to replace all the decking. So that's what we're looking at for that project on for our portion.
All right. I'm not sure if it is a few stringers or if it's the whole thing.
Just the deck boards themselves, I think, you know.
And in protective services, we have two programs there that I'd like to highlight, the Fire Master Plan and the Fire Smart grant money that we received. I think Fire Chief Mike Smith might want to expand on that a little bit.
Sorry, did you say the that we received? Yeah, we haven't applied for that grant yet. No, we had to wait for the previous two Community Resiliency Investment Program fund grants to be finished before we can apply for the next one. Working on finalizing, sending worksheet 1 to BC Wildfires Prevention Officer. They have to okay that what you want to do in the grant first before you submit the grant to UBCM. So that's where we are with that. And the master plan, there's a business case. We would probably start it later this year and finish it up next year for an overall vision of protective services fire department for the next 20 to 25 years. I think we've looked at funding it from its reserve or surplus, Ms. Claassen? We changed that from reserves before, right?
Growing community reserve.
Yeah.
The $1.5 million we got last.
So we're looking at, for that, to look at water sources for Greer and Candle Creek, as well as, you know, just what the growth might look like and what the department needs will be for the next 20 or so years.
And finally, our largest project in this department, or in this area, is the dredging of Cell 2. A few of our new projects that we haven't previous to this meeting spoke about, but we've spoken about during this meeting, is listed here. The items in blue are new grant funds, and the items in green are older grant funds. For example, the park improvement project, which we spoke in length on the capital project, is TMX funds. We spoke about the EOC network. The director of corporate services expanded on that. We spoke about the accessibility project, which is new funds that we recently received. We haven't spoken about the heliport master plan for $19,000 as a special project. I'm not, is it you? Yeah, the director of corporate services would be happy to speak about that project.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Claassen. The helipad project, as council is well aware, it is a very public project at this point in time. The public is very aware of it. It was originally intended to be beside the hospital. However, Interior Health didn't want it beside their hospital, or they didn't want to be involved. That since has changed. They are willing to work. The project is a sort of master plan to sort of design and cost out sort of the construction costs for a later year, and to sort of build that plan for a grant application for the actual construction costs. Any questions on that at this time? It is through a third-party consultant where I'm just managing the project.
Question, Councillor Frizzle?
So the plan is now to do it at the hospital site, or is that plan, will that plan decide if that's feasible or somewhere else?
Thank you.
Is that you or me?
Councillor Fizzler through Acting Mayor McKenzie. That would be, both sites are still under consideration, and it would identify which one is the best, probably construction costs for either of them as well. We still have to work through a lot of the particulars with Interior Health. I know they have announced that they're willing to work on the project on hospital grounds as well. However, I don't believe staff have actually directly contacted them about that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
And the only other project on the list is the emergency management plan, the Indigenous engagement, where we received $40,000 or grant for that project. Was it you?
I'll do my best to speak to it. Haven't really looked into this yet. It's just some money that the province has given out after the new EMC or EDMA, the Emergency Disaster Management Act. It's for engaging with First Nations, and yeah, that's all I can say to that right now, actually.
Sorry. Was this the grant that our previous economic development officer applied for? Or is this something new?
No, this is a separate one. It's a new one.
It's a new one.
They just a few weeks ago gave notice and sent it to me and said, you're getting $40,000 to do this part of Bill 31. And it was just here. We didn't apply for it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's got strings attached, as like always.
And finally, we come to some resolutions here. I've got 2 resolutions here. I just drafted in case you would like them. To either remove any projects that you council feels they would like to remove, or to add any special projects that, or projects that they would like to add. And I have this recommendation as well, which is to approve certain projects that staff is recommending. So which would you like to go through first? Would you like to go through or either?
Before we go through, I just want to make sure I'm on the right understanding. So all of these projects are grant funded, none of them are taxpayer.
Some of them are reserve funded. Funded through reserves.
Mr. Prime?
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor McKenzie. Salt and sand spreader is taxation?
Yes. Yes. Yep. So they're the salt and sand spreader, which we've provided a business case before, the annual roads program, just to get a head start on this. I think we ran into trouble last year with this program. The Clearwater River Riprap Bridge riprap repair, that's a large project, probably needs long lead times to get through it. The blower room upgrades would like to be completed before warmer weather hits. Operations and maintenance manual for the wastewater treatment plant, I don't think they have one, so they would like to get that underway. Yellow Iris probably again needs to happen before it gets too warm. Firefighter turnout gear and training equipment. The fire department would like to get ahead of that so that they can focus on other things. EUC network infrastructure improvement, we talked about that, and the weather's been so good that we probably can get that done quicker as well. Development services refresh project, that project is already underway, so we'll be extending that. And then the Fire Smart Coordinator project, where it'll include the application for that grant. And one that we recommended, suggested, is the park improvement project with the TMX funds, so that we're ready come summertime, that we have a nice pathway there.
So I'm just going to need some clarity. So just before we go forward on that, so the salt and sand spreader is $25,000. That's taxation.
Yes.
Difficult to approve the yellow iris one because we haven't found a grant for it.
No.
Okay, so that one couldn't go through.
Make it contingent on.
Okay, that's what I'm just making sure. So I'm just reading through the summary. Everything else on that list is grant funded
Or reserve funded.
or reserve funded.
Like the roads project is reserve funded. Clearwater River Bridge is from a grant. The blower room is reserve funded. The operations manual is sewer reserve. Yellow Iris, we haven't applied for a grant, but we think we can get one there for that one. Fire turnout gear is coming from the fire reserve. Fire training equipment, I believe we have received a grant for that. EOC is also grant funded. Development Services Refresh Project, we have a grant for that. And the Fire Smart Coordinator, we would like to apply for a grant on that, the UBCM grant.
And a supplemental to that is the turnout gear that we refer to for the fire department. We all agree that that's important, and we like the lens, the fact that rather than doing 20 at a time, we do 4 at a time. If it's coming out of reserve, I think that there was a conversation that somehow we actually incorporate that into the budget. So is that best under a reserve, or should we be looking forward to doing that differently? I'm just trying to look for a refresh on what we had talked about. Okay.
Well,
Like, is reserve a way to budget?
well, we put money into reserve too, so the fire department puts 130, 90,000, depends on what they need for the reserve to match their needs in the future. So that department kind of is all encompassing. I can put a part of operating costs and then we won't see it, but it's a large amount and
If you feel it's best, I just know that it keeps coming up, but it keeps coming up and out
yeah,
of reserve,
we can
so.
move that one to operating costs and it'll be part of our day-to-day operating costs.
It just seems that it is, but if there's a strategic reason for it, then that's something else to consider.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Thackeray.
Thank you. So myself and the fire chief and director of finance, we were talking earlier. We have some statutory or legal conditions that apply to certain types of equipment in the fire service. For example, the fire trucks, there's typically a 20 or 25 year lifespan of the pumps, turnout gear, things, and everything has to be certified and so forth. And so it makes good sense, to your point. We want to make sure that the funds, that we're putting sufficient funds away in our reserves so we can fund these things, so we have basically a steady expenditure line, not something that spikes every few years, because as you know, this equipment can be very costly, and that's not helpful for doing long-range financial planning. And I really support our director, and we want to move ahead with some financial guidelines and strategy, and I think that will really help along with developing some policy with a long horizon. And so council then will have confidence that, you know, things are being funded sustainably, because these are things we really have no choice over. And then there's the other thing that I should remind council of too, is Bill 31 is come into effect, but the regulations have not. We have no idea what the cost of that is going to be. We just know it's going to be costly. And so we just want to prepare you that there will be costs to that. Myself and the fire chief were going through our EOC organizational structure today. And what we found is we can just operate a very lean EOC, but we're going to need to find more resources due to the legislation, especially when the regulations come through. And I don't have an answer for that. I just want to give you a heads up, just so you're not surprised. No surprises. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Herring?
Personally, I'm in favor of approving the projects as presented. I don't think there's anything on there that I don't understand what priority. It all seems well within the due, considering sand and salt spreader is the only taxpayer funded inside of the grant projects.
just a question before
Counselor
we
Sun?
have a seconder, is it, what I'm curious about is if we take that list, and we don't approve anything that is tax funded, so that we have tax funded in a separate bucket, so that we can get an accounting, because I still don't know where we're landing on for a tax rate, so I would rather approve things that, you know, make sense to do the reserves, figure out what may have to come under taxation. And Yellow Iris contingent on grant funding. That would be,
And add the park improvements. That's what I heard.
Counselor Frizzle?
Well, with that, would we not put the Fire Smart Coordinator project under contingent of grant as well then?
yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
Mr. Thackeray?
Clarify, the committee of the whole is amenable to recommending to council to support the list with special emphasis on the Fire Smart Coordinator, subject to getting grant funding. And then the other parts of the list, as long as they're not property tax revenue based funding sources, they would be approved, subject to the grants moving forward. But if it's tax revenue, you want that in a separate list, which is the IRIS and the sands and salt spreader.
The Iris isn't, is it? The grant, so that one.
But you asked for those two to be set aside, is what I heard. Correct.
Right,
No,
we're
that's
not
right. It's
going to get a
taxpayer
grant for the
funded, but
salt,
it's
salt and
contingent on-
sand.
It's contingent on a grant, and then the salt and sand spreader is contingent on approval of the final tax revenue model as presented when that comes forward.
Yep, that's correct. And I just want to go back to the parks. And what are we looking at for that?
Yes.
If we can just get a summary of that again, please.
So in the parks improvement, it included a gazebo,
Yep.
a septic, a trail, a fence, and a flag if we have. So what we did is we consolidated several projects into one.
Counselor Frizzle?
Can I, where was the fence going again?
Down on the
Kapuscinski.
plots.
Oh, right. I had it up at the part.
Counselor Herring?
So for that one, can we kind of put it in order?
Talking about the parks, 37 East.
My understanding from the rest of the group is trail, septic, gazebo, fence, flag. Like that being order of priority for that.
Yes.
If I could make a recommendation, I think we would look at the flag poles as the last thing to do. The other things would be, to your point, I would recommend doing all of the other things, and if there's time left, we'll do the flags as well. Otherwise, I would recommend taking the money for the flags. As much as I know it would be nice to do that, that's more of a nice to have than the other things, I think. I think this is what you're driving at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to see fence put in the same category as well. To be honest, I think 37 East and the Dutch Lake Park being the priority, and if we have money left over, then we talk Kapuscinski Ball, College Park fence and flag.
Counselor Sun?
My only question on that is I don't know where the fencing fits in terms of a safety issue. I just want to check.
Yeah, it's,
Mike?
it's where it needs to be.
Just gonna-
There we go. So it was actually identified as a safety issue by municipal insurance about 6 years ago.
Oh,
And we have delayed because minor softball has discussed changing to hardball, which means moving the fences. We didn't want to build the fence once and then the following year move the fences again. I decided that this year we waited long enough. It's probably a project that we should do. And it really should be done before ball season.
okay.
Councillor Frizzle.
I guess I still need clarification on the trail from the lake to 97 East. Is that included, the cost included in that?
Yes.
Yes? See, yes, this is, so it is included in there.
Yes, I believe so. Chad and I haven't had it, this was Chad, that trail was Chad's project, so I don't want to speak for him, but I believe that that number that he had for paving was included in this grant.
Correct?
That was the intention. So
So the,
I haven't personally added up all the cost of each project
Yeah.
to confirm that we're at the right number.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to prioritize, we say that's the very first priority.
Well, I think to Councillor Herring's point, that's where we get into the weeds, because priority would be weather dependent, so we want to be sensitive to that. So, but I think I know what I'm looking for, is I'm looking for, with that park plan there, what would the community see as the final project by including this today? What would it look like for them?
They want to pass paved pathway, I feel.
paved pathway, so there's number one then.
And as long as that's in that amount of the $330,000 that's covered by the TMX funding, and that is our entire project list, so we would have all of it in there, then we're good to go. Right? Okay. Great. This is exciting.
It is exciting. Min,
So, Councillor Herring, do you want to amend your, we didn't have a seconder, so you can just start fresh?
So, yeah, I'm fine with all the suggested amendments, so I'll make a motion that we approve all the projects as listed, with the exception of the sand and salt spreader, which we will assess based on tax rate. And then that project conditional on a grant line action unless the grant is received, or however we want to write that. Oh, and the park project.
Yes. Yep. Second by Councillor Frizzle.
Okay, let's just make sure. Okay, thank you very much for that clarity. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. All those in favor? Thank you. Oh. Fuck.
Just to double check, does the committee of the whole want to make any other recommendations for any other projects at this time? Or remove any projects at this time?
Councillor Sim?
For me, it's hard to know what to remove because I don't have a final destination of what that looks like. So if we had everything that came in right now, your report is suggesting we could be at a 9%, but we haven't gone through everything. So if it works out to be higher than that, I would be remiss in saying, yeah, I'm supportive of it. So for me, I need to see that fuller
Okay.
project. Certainly trust the staff that's, in the projects that are there. And I think that we've been fairly committed that we want to make sure that all of those carryover projects are fulfilled, and to support the work that has been done. So by adding on more, I don't think that any of us are keen for that.
That's a good list.
All right, if council so chooses, after they're seen the next two portions of the presentation, please let me know. Going into the operating plan is basically we've gone through a process of reviewing assumptions and historical costs. And the management has provided us with the input to those, of what they felt takes to run their departments. They've consolidated I've consolidated their operating inputs and included the special projects in the funding, and we're now looking for council review and approval. Well, not quite approval yet, but review of those operating plans. Again, throughout the whole process, we have been implementing Questica. And some of the managers have put some of their, gone into Questica, added their operating costs into into Questica, added supporting documentation and things like that. Once we transition fully, it'll be a really good software for us to use. And here we have one of these, this is called a Sankey graph, and my colleague Elsid Prime has recommended this to be a good graphic and how to understand where our costs come from and where our costs go. So this is what we would call non-discretionary costs. So if everything else stopped, but we just wanted to keep the doors open, no projects, no savings, no things like that, it wouldn't be a long-term solution. It is our non-discretionary costs. So to balance it, I reduced the taxes. So we would have all our sales of services. We would have a few grants coming in, like from the TNRD, and some government grants that don't have any conditions tied to them. You might still need some reserves to supplement, and we would continue to have interest. And just to, and it would fund our government services, our protective services, our transportation, our community development, recreation, and water and sewer. So it costs us $5.3 million just to operate from a day-to-day. What this translates into is about $443,000 a month. So, but this does not replenish our reserves either. And just to, what this does is just to validate whether or not it's reasonable, whether or not the $5.3 million a year is reasonable. So what I did is I looked at our non-discretionary costs from 2023 and our non-discretionary costs in 2024. In 2023, it was about $5 million. We added a CPI of $3.9 million. It's almost $198,000. We have some large contracts increases throughout the year, between one year to the next. We have some operational changes, organizational changes, and we have a reduction in debt payments. And we come to a very close to 2024 non-discretionary costs of $5.3 million. It adds up very quickly. In our revenue side, this is 3 years. So you have the green is 2024, the orange is 2023, and the blue is 2022. And it's not a great graph because it's hard to see because the general revenues are so high there. But in 2023, we received a $1.5 million grant in operating revenue. So, and that's where that shows. And if you look at cemetery and septage, right in the middle of the graph, you have 2024 being reduced significantly. There we have our septage and receiving is fallen quite a bit since the TMX has moved out of town. And in our planning and development, it's an up and down there. You see in 2023, we had an economic development officer that did a lot of work. We were supporting her with a lot of grants and things like that. And it's kind of an up and down kind of thing there. And then in the sewer, you see also it's quite high for sewer. Again, that's the dredging is involved there. So there's special projects involved in funding special projects through the revenue. These are a lot of numbers, and I apologize, but they're wonderful. So this is our revenue. This is what your bylaw report will be. This is the top half, so it's all your revenue. And what we're seeing, a year-over-year revenue. And I want to caution you here not to jump to conclusions because we have the other story, which is assessments, which changes things quite a bit. But between 2023 and 2024, you see that the revenue from taxation has increased about $271,000. So it's about 9%. From 2024 to 2025, it increases about 4%. and 24.5 to 26 increases about 6%. In 2027, it falls. Like we don't really need a lot of more taxation revenue at that point, and that point is where I have to review and go back, as this is a draft. I'm going, what's going on there? But something must have been going on there. And then in 28, we go back to about 3% increases. You do see that we have debt coming in on 2025 borrowing proceeds. You haven't seen that before in the last couple of years I've been here. And of course, council will have to review that and make the decision on how we want to fund those projects if those are important for 2025. Would you like to look at that a little further? It's a lot of numbers, and I can provide you with a draft form if you like.
So what you're asking is, do we want to see the numbers for the projected debt that would be included in 2025? Is that what is that the question you're asking?
I'm not asking that question, no. I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry. What you asked is, do you want to see more information on the?
I'm not sure if I provided this bylaw report in your package. I can provide that to council because it was a lot of detail without the explanations. So I probably didn't provide it in your package. But it will be a report that we will see as we move through the process. So I want to share this report today and just explain the variances that we see as they go through. A lot of the variances are due to funding projects that we have developed in the future, and debt is a big changer because we haven't had debt before. So I reviewed a few of those, and when I'm looking at debt, right now the debt service is quite low for the District of Clearwater. And I'm just thinking, the interest is running about 4.2, depending on what term you use. When I looked at water and sewer, they couldn't afford too much more than what I put on there. And this is the second half, which is the expenditures. And you need to keep in mind that there is you'll see changes in from year to year because of special projects that are embedded in this bylaw. You'll see changes on the capital expenditure list. So you see that $6 million from 2024, right in the middle of the page. 2025 is $4.7 million. And you can see our contributions from transfers to reserves, because we transfer our money into savings, and that's about $800,000 year over year. And of course, it needs to be balanced. So what that means is I need to make sure that all our revenues equal out our expenditures. And expenditures can mean capital as well.
Microphone. Teresa can't hear you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I know it's hard without the revised rules because it's very difficult to see what is actually going to change. But if we look at that chart you had of the base level, just keeping the municipality afloat, that's not including any other projects. And we were to look at what has happened with the values in our town, we've seen roughly a 10% reduction, as I understand it. Are we in a position to say that we can be fairly certain taxes will have to go up to fund our core level expenditure?
I would love to answer that question in about 4 slides.
Okay.
Like 4 slides.
All right, now I'm stepping into taxation. And we talked about property values have decreased. We talked about BC assessment has several cycles, and we need to wait for the final completed revised roll. The revised roll will be coming out in March. And we've seen an increase or decrease in residential results, assessments, and an increase in utilities. So here what we have is, this is 2023, and we get this information from our local government information systems. We've chosen some municipalities between 1,900 and 3,000, plus I threw in Merritt just because I'm interested in seeing what Merritt was doing. So the bars are the residential assessments. So the average of all these communities is about $415,000, and our community in 2023 was $450,000. So we're within $35,000 of the average community. So those are all the bars. So the average is the green bar, and we're the yellow bar. So not really out of line with a lot of the other communities on average. Taxes paid is the orange trend, or the orange line, not the bar, the line. And the average municipality, just for general municipal tax, was 1,292, and the District of Clearwater was at 1,333. So we're close to the average. It was very interesting looking at some of this information for other communities like Whistler. I think we're just happy that we live here.
Can you just explain Logan Lake to me, for example? Because that one's quite low.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I mean, this is just information that they've put into the system, and I'm not sure exactly. Mr. Thacker.
So I think if you're comparing residential taxes, Logan Lake has a mine.
No, I understand that. I'm just,
Or is,
and so is that, is the orange line depicting like the full dollar value paid?
It's depicting the municipal taxes paid.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
not depicting any regional or hospital or any of those taxes. It's also not depicting the utilities.
So what's interesting about this, for example, so to the point of Logan Lake, is that that is how their residential taxes are paid, but the bulk of it, looks like 50%, is paid by other sources. So it would be their business or their, is that how I'm reading that?
No, well, I'm not sure. The bars are the residential values. So Logan Lake's residential value average is over $400,000, over about $450,000. So you look on your left axis, those are your residential assessments. So the bars are the assessments per resident. So the average is 415, and we're coming in at 450 for just assessments for your residential home. The line, the trend line, is the taxes they pay for just municipal taxes. It does not include utilities. It does not include the additional for regional districts, hospital or school, or MFA or BC assessment. It doesn't include any of that. I don't know why Logan Lake is so low, but sometimes they don't have the services that we may have. You have anything else on that?
So if I'm understanding right, our takeaway from this graph is that Clearwater is coming out somewhat average for both the assessment value of our homes, and we're coming out average in terms of the amount of tax we pay across similar
Yes.
communities.
For communities that are between 1,900 and 3,000, those ones that we've got here for 2023. Okay, so here we've been following about four residents as we look through, rather than just averages. And those 4 residents, there we have 2 in class 1, which is residential, and 2 in class 6, which is business. And in 2023, you can see some residents, one fell like 20% and the other fell like 1%. And where in class 6, they both increased 12 or 15%. So it's on average, however, the class 1 residents fell 10% and the class 6 also fell. So it is interesting. We're kind of all, the assessments, we're not all the same. And total assessments reduced about, like if you took everything, it reduced about 6%. And that is made up of market change and non-market change. So market change is just the value of your house going up and down based on your neighbor selling their property. Non-market change means that you subdivided and you added something, or you took, or something came off, or you demolished something. Now the utilities increased 34.76%, and some of that is market and some of that is non-market change. They went all up. The class 6 increased 9%, and some of it's market and some of it's non-market. And I think this slide is where you really want to look at. And there's a lot here. So I'm going to try to go through it and for council consideration. So the green section is your 2023, and the light blue section is 2024 draft. Now what we do is we use these ratios to allocate between the classes. And you can see in 2023, if we just focus on there, that we collected $3 million in taxation. And of that, 51% was paid by residents, residential, 27% was paid by utilities, and 22% was paid by business. Other. Just focusing on those 3 classes. And if I did nothing to the formula and I just plunked in my 3.273 million that I need to, at 9% increase, what happens there is you see a shift. You see the shift from the residents now only pay 44%, the utilities increase to 33%, and the business pays 23%. And you see on the far right the difference. Right? You see that the residential group actually pays less because the utilities is taking it all on, and the business is taking on some as well. So it's so some things that you need to, when you're looking at the ratios today, council may want to consider changing the ratios because there's some rules around it. The rules are residential is always 1, and in utilities, there's a factor there that it can either be 2.5 over the major industry or 40. There's a factor in there. I always maximize the utilities side of things. And then, but I'm wondering if council wants to consider a change between business other and residential, whereas they include or reduce the ratio in business other in those categories so that the tax burden is shared and not pushed on as much onto the business side of the community. It's something we didn't really need to do last year. But now when I see the shift going from 51% in 2023 for residential moving down to 44, there might be something council may want to do or direct staff to have a look at. That's the first thing. And then another thing, because we have the benefit of the utilities increase in their assessments, does council want to perhaps put something away? So that, again, would shift it back to the residential into reserve, a stabilization reserve or something like that. It's perhaps a little bit much to think about right now, but it's important to understand that even though we went up in our pricing at, or costs of 9.7%, the burden is all falling on two categories, and it's reducing residential.
So just to follow up on the past trajectory of council, is that when Canfor closed, what was that, 4 years ago, 6 years ago?
2018, I believe.
Council went in with the philosophy that we would support business, and we were quite purposeful in not raising taxes then. And then we really focused on our business community, and we made sure that the business community could really solidify itself, recognizing that the project was going to be coming in and that there would be some benefits to it. So now we've gone through that. I would say that the Valley did particularly well through the TMX project. That would include even our tourism sector, which was able to transition through COVID to be able to open it. And so I just want to pay attention to still caring deeply about our business community, but recognizing that we had a philosophy. So maybe that we do factor that in, that the businesses this year maybe have to pay a little bit more because they'd been supported in the past because the residents took that share. Is that kind of a fair assessment? Have I made a summary of what you see has happened?
I can't really speak on the past. However, that's the kind of direction I'm looking for, is how this is up to council to share or direct staff to go review further the ratios, and if that we could go with that as well.
And so so if 2023 are utilities, so examples of who would be paying utilities, who would that be?
I'm guessing it's Trans Mountain. I haven't looked at all the details, but whoever has a class 2.
Okay, so to me, that also impacts a particular strategy of where we're going.
So, yes, so we maximize, in my calculations, I've maximized class 2
Okay,
regardless.
okay, you've maximized it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that regardless if we shift, I have to always, my strategy has always been maximizing class 2 as a strategy.
Okay. All right, that's an important thing to know. Thank you. And I think that the other challenge has always been in Clearwater is that much of taxes have to be recouped by our residents because we don't have a lot of major industry.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps, you see the 270, perhaps we want to put something away for stabilization. Reducing individual residential tax might not be the way to go, but maybe it's a moderate increase to 3% or something like that. And we put something for stabilization in the future.
Oh, Councilor Herring, sorry.
So I guess for me, one of the things these are the tough decisions for sure, because essentially like raising those taxes on businesses is also raising the costs on residents, right? Because like all those businesses are going to recoup additional tax costs by raising their prices to charge locals for more things. So regardless of who we prioritize in this thing, the citizens of Clearwater are going to be paying an increased premium due to these taxes, whether it's on business or whether it's on individuals. I think sharing some of that load might be an approach where we can say, we've bumped residential taxes up slightly to offset some of the costs to businesses, because we want to acknowledge that the people of Clearwater want businesses in our community to survive, right? And I think that acknowledgement hurts because, of course, there's going to be it's good mood music, but I think that takes into account some of that interplay, because we've got people on fixed incomes, all of that stuff on that residential side that, of course, are going to be hurt. But those people, if they can't afford to shop in Clearwater, they're going to be paying a lot more to drive to Kamloops and shop, right? So to me, this is about mutual, like we all need to work together. And so giving the business community somewhat of a break while giving the residential taxes perhaps a slight increase, to me makes sense.
Yeah, and I especially look at, businesses that we, included in that is our hospitality sector. So although locals wouldn't necessarily purchase that, there is the fact that they are the gateway for a lot of our tournaments and for all sorts of services. So I think that's sound. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we have had a strategy to this point, and now we are at the point where we have to revamp that strategy. Right? And how we share. I think what's really important is all of this is after tax dollars, and how much is in this budget that is, we just heard that there's $40,000 that has come from the government and said, here's a gift, but how much does it cost the taxpayer to actually administer it? Right? So this is all after tax dollars for people. That's what drives me crazy for some of these things.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yeah, would council like us to develop some what the ratio shift would look like? Because we could shift, you can shift the residential utilities, business, and so forth. There's not much else. There's not much impact on the other things. It sounds like you want to give business some help. There has been the impact of the assessments. We know that overall we've lost 6% in change for assessment base. So there is a shift, and we could present you a couple of models. I would give you some ideas and a revenue model just based on some core assumptions. Would council be open to that?
I think Councillor Herring had a good point, is that if we didn't take any new business cases, if we didn't take any new need, like let's say we didn't get a sander for the community, what would the tax have to shift to just meet the keeping the doors open?
Yeah, so we could show you some of our fixed costs that,
is that the slide?
they're contractual costs, right? And that those things, they have a number, and we could show you what it costs in terms of when council wants new initiatives. There's a cost to that too, because the district has been very, very careful with its money in some ways, and tried to, okay, if something's done over here, we'll move that money over there, but that's not a long-term solution. Because honestly, the district, if the district keeps going the way it's going, it's not sustainable. Is the bottom line. And we need to and I think something else we want to recommend are some lobbying efforts with the provincial government, because of the cost, the way the provincial government gave us an existence was based on some other assumptions when there was major industry here.
So thank you for bringing this slide up again. What I'm reading from this slide is our basic keep the doors open has increased, as you said, by that CPI amount, which works out to be about $300,000. That $300,000, in order to do that, would have to be shared over all the 6 classes, right?
And currently it's shared, it's predominantly the utility class, because it's the only one that went up.
Right. So I think although this is a helpful one, I'm trying to figure out what does that translate that we would need to set as a tax base just to keep the lights on.
This is just the lights on, but no savings. It's not sustainable.
And one of the things that the electorate had said is you need to be responsible. You need to look ahead, and we do not want our roads to be, in disrepair, and we want to look after our assets, etc. But I'm trying to get a baseline so that when we translate this out to the public, we can say it's only going to cost you this, but you're not going to be, saving for your roof next year. Like, we are responsible for the house of the community. Yep. and trying to get that translated. Where do we raise the $300,000? How does that make, like, I always look at my taxes, and I always look, okay, for approximately, $250 a month, this is what I get for my tax. That's how I break it down. So that's is what I'm trying to get to, is am I going to have to pay to get to live in this wonderful community?
Understood. I was wondering, we were talking internally amongst ourselves, but as a project we'd like to do is, would council be interested in looking back over a 5 to 10 year, probably a 10-year period, on what the impact of new initiatives has had on your bottom line? So new initiatives have a cost, and sometimes they get funded through grants, sometimes they get funded through combinations of different funds, but eventually they do cost. And I think it would be a good exercise to get a fulsome picture of where the district is at. It would be my recommendation. It's not something we're going to do next week, but it's something I think would be useful over time, because the cumulative decisions over time, and they're good decisions. They're not. This is not a judgment. They have to be funded, and I think it'll help inform us to develop some new financial strategies so we are sustainable long term. So, for example, a policy. If there's a new program, it should be funded with new, fresh money, whether it's revenues, fees, charges, taxation, but it has to be fresh rather than trying to repurpose money, because what's happening is, as my colleague has said, we're not putting money away for those things that need to be fixed. And we know that things happen, and we cannot ask our taxpayer to pay large tax increases because of past decisions. They simply won't support it. So that would be my suggestion.
So I don't know if I want to go, I think that I would like to maybe embark on a little bit more of a discussion on that. The reason being is, having sat on council for a number of years, a lot of our decision making has had to be just to become an adolescent municipality.
Of course.
So for example,
Yes.
going back and understanding that when we were 5 years in and we had to take over the roads contract, that was a big bump. And it's taken us a while to get used to that. So
Absolutely.
I think that the reset is what going forward it's going to cost. That makes sense to me. And that's why I think that the business cases are so important, is understanding where does that new money come from and what it may take away from our savings plan. Yeah. So when we look at these business plans, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Is it an urgent problem that we need to solve? I'm hearing, for example, Kapustinsky Park, that is a municipal insurance thing. That's kind of an urgent thing. But each of the business cases has to be matched with that priority level, and it takes away from our ability to save for tomorrow.
That's right, and I don't. This is not an exercise to cast any judgment on a decision that was made. The decision was made for a reason, and it was a good decision. It's simply an exercise to reposition the financial plan, to look seriously. Is when council does want to do new initiatives, there really is a cost. It's like when the government throws you money for all this, they give you a grant. But that's only 30% of the cost of an asset. 70% of your asset cost is the life cycle of that project. So if we're putting money aside even just to replace the NTSP, that's a $30 million building, right, give or take right now. And I mean that's just an estimate, but we got to think. It would be in our benefit to think long term on this. Like, look 20 years out. That's my suggestion, and I know cities have done it, and they've done it well. And if you do it in disciplined, your taxes don't spike, because what happens if you don't? Then you get in these pushed in a corner, and you're like, we need big dollar increases, and this does the opposite. It will make it much more reasonable, and you'll have a much steadier revenue stream.
Councillor Herring.
I think I would love to see that, and as a component of that, I would love to see the percentage of those new projects that are dictated by provincial priorities or federal, like a Bill 31 being a key example, because I think it could be a huge advocacy tool for us to go back and say, great, so you're asking us to ask the public for this money, but over the last 10 years, we've seen X number of dollars increase thanks to provincial initiatives with X number of grant dollars not matching.
Exactly.
And I think it's a very good tool. I'd love to see it for us in communication when we go out to eventually communicate this budget.
And that's exactly what I would recommend using it for. And to your point, Councillor Sim, when the province decided to give the district the roads, they did it under an assumption that there was a financial capacity to do it. That's changed. The edges, the goalposts have moved, and the province has not come to the table and said, replacing that bridge out there is, eight figures big. It's not a small project, and that's way outside of our wheelhouse to be able to afford. So we have to come up with a different way to finance these things with the province, and the province has to be realistic about it, because otherwise they're basically setting the district up for bankruptcy. Not that you can go bankrupt, because you can't, but it's simply not sustainable. I'm just being honest and realistic, and so but there is a strategy, and there is a way forward, and gives you the opportunity to go to the province, no matter which government is in power, and say, look, here are the facts. And here's where we are. And when you gave us these roads and this infrastructure back in the day, things were different. So thank you.
So,
Can I speak?
Oh, great. Yeah, Councillor Bratton, yes.
I would like to see the different ratios, the different reports of the different ratio changes. Keeping mindful too that most of business owners are also residents. So regardless of, I mean, they understand that they're going to have to pay taxes and that they typically pay more taxes, but I'd like to keep that in mind as well. So for me, I would like to see what happens when we change those percentages. If that makes sense.
yes, so I have those, and I would be happy to provide them in a future council meeting. Also, I just wanted to note, when we do the business cases, we want to look at life cycle costing. I know we introduced the business cases, some are done better than others. Full life cycle costing is still learning about it. And that is exactly what we're talking about. We often get a project, we find a grant for $100,000, but it costs us $20,000, $30,000 to maintain it every year. Or we didn't consider even consider when you hire a person, it's not their wage and benefits. It's also the use of the pencils and the computers and the space. You know, we're running out of space, so now they use space, and it's you can cost everything, but it's a life cycle of costs. So, and that's what we're looking for, and it's a really good exercise to go through. However, resources, you know, are challenging, but this isn't a bad news story. This is not. We have additional utilities, non-market changes that provide us with some benefit and some flexibility. Changing the ratios, I can provide council different ratio and see the impact, and we also have our options. So the story itself I don't think is a bad news story. We can do this.
I think that what was helpful in the past, and maybe it's still yet to come. Do we have more slides before I ask it this question? No.
Have public engagement slides.
Okay, does that show what, because I think in the past what's been successful and helpful for council is when you've shown examples of what?
Yes, that's the next meeting. The next council meeting. We're really in the preliminary stages of the full picture now, but yes. Like this, I've shown those slides, and it's when we're providing at the committee of a whole all the options for taxation.
Yeah, okay.
But
I'm feeling anxious, that's all. Like right now I'm anxious. That's all.
Okay.
But only because tax season is never a calming feeling either. and managing. Okay, let's continue.
I guess part of being resolving anxiety is becoming involved in something like a public engagement.
I think also that there's something to be said is that a lot of your great presentation, we've given an afternoon, whereas you get to live in this world, and when you clap your hands with glee, you know, that is reassuring because it means that you do appreciate it. But for me, it's a first blush, and so my anxiety rises.
And I like to sit with what I find for a while. Sometimes I'm in a rush, and then I'm you know, it's good to sit with it and think about it, and it's good to come back to this when we see it again in a few weeks. And we'll go out for engagement in the meantime, collect feedback, because that's really what's important here. Perhaps share some of our knowledge and our understanding and provide some clarity. Right now, what I have is 3 dates. Thank you, Councillor Frizzle, for inviting me to the seniors luncheon on the 13th. And who said that finance isn't close to my heart, Valentine's Day. And then on the 16th, we were thinking of a pop-up table here with the lunch, or soup lunch. And on the 23rd of February, we made arrangements to be in the library. So we're trying to engage in different ways, go where people are instead of asking people to come, our community to come to where we are. We've started with some of our preparations by providing a slide or a document. And we have a video if you want to see the video. It's no change, it's a little bit different than from last time, but I'm open to. Okay. Excuse me. I can't.
You can never have too much trees out.
Okay. Does that work?
You just, Bill. She's yelling.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's gonna work. Stop it. We've had a little bit of trouble with the sound.
I'm not hearing sound, but that's okay. I can read.
So I just have a couple of comments, if I may, on that. One is that the 2 engagement sessions are both during the day, and I don't know what our option for an evening one, or if there's a way to do a summary document that is, if your plan was to do a summary document on the website that could be accessed for it. The second one is that looks like a lot of really wonderful projects, but in the first part of our committee of the whole is a number of those are covered by grants or reserves, and to put some sort of an asterisk or something to help explain that. I don't know if that's important, what council thinks about that, but if I were just to look at that as a general thing, I'm like thinking that's a lot of money, when in fact the team has been really good about soliciting a number of grants that would offset that work, and I think that is an important part of the engagement.
I would be happy to make those changes in the video evening engagement.
Or even on the
We can do.
Yeah, or even on the last part of the slide is just to do a summary of the projects with the asterisk. So there's that one pager. Here's what we're thinking is going to enhance, our community, and this is what we're looking at for the 2 projects. And I think that makes a difference. Because those park things, and to know that 37 East is going to be completed this year, and yet we're doing it under a funded program, that's exciting.
That the Committee of the Whole direct staff to move forward with the public engagement events and provide council with feedback received.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to having it, and I think last year you had it that there was an email set up to receive information.
We do feedback at
Yeah.
ucbc.ca. That's still set up.
Okay. And then if we did have sort of that one pager or something so that, people can access if they can't get to the engagement sessions.
Yes. We have some ideas
Okay.
floating around about our website and perhaps something on Facebook. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to be able to say to our community, this is what we're going to accomplish this year.
Yeah. And council is happy with the project list and what we've put out there so far. Okay. We're satisfied. Not happy.
All those in favor? Sorry. Yeah, no, sorry about that. That will be passed. Now, that wraps up our, oh, sorry about that. You're done? Thanks, Ms. Clausen. Well, that'll wrap up our committee of the whole. It's a recommendation that February 6, 2024, committee of the whole meeting be adjourned. Moved by Councillor Herring. Second by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Okay, and now back into our regular. Okay, I will like to call our regular council meeting back to order at 3:47. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Second by Councillor Herring. All those in favor? Thank you. And now, just to clarify, we go back to 9.2 on our regular council. This is where it kind of got muddled here.
So now we pick up where we left off on the agenda, and council can make a resolution to adopt the recommendations from the committee of the whole. If that's your wish.
Yeah, that's.
And if it might be more convenient, would it be in order to have a recess as people have been sitting? Would that be
Yes, we can do that.
at some point? Whenever you're ready.
Okay, good. take a recess. Oh. I would take a 5-minute recess and,
Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna vote on the recommendations.
correct. Correct.
So could we get a mover for a recess, please?
Councillor Frizzle moved. And second by Councillor Herring. All in favor? Thank you. I gotta stand.
Oh, my head.
too. Okay, we do have a couple recommendations here. I'm just going right back into those. That's all we have left for that one. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. There's a couple recommendations here. Recommendation that the February 6th, 2024 Committee of the Whole. One, that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council to approve the following 2024 projects. A annual roads capital project, Clearwater River Bridge riprap repair, blower room upgrade, operations and maintenance manual for wastewater treatment, firefighter turnout gear, fire training equipment, development services refresh project, TMX Parks Improvement Project, and that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council to approve the following 2024 projects contingent on successful grant funding. That would be for the Fire Smart Coordinator Project, the EOC Network Infrastructure Improvement, and Yellow Iris remediation. Moved by Councillor Herring. Second by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Oh, fuck you, thank you. Oh, hey, there she is. Thank you. And second one, that the Committee of the Whole recommends Council direct staff to move forward with public engagement events and provide Council with the feedback received. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Oh, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bratton. And all those in favor? And that is passed. Thank you. Now, we are... Okay, try this again. There's a recommendation that the meeting be closed to public pursuant to sections 91 of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And J, information that is provided or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Seconded by Councillor Bratton. All those in favor? Thank you.
I just would like to let everybody know there's nobody in my house. My kids went down the street to play. So it's just me here if I'm still allowed to stay.
Okay. Yes. Yes, thank you.